Hey, what's up, everybody? This is the Chicago Gooner. This is my first upload on this channel, and of course, it's going to be everything Arsenal. Uh, Arsenal Football Club is my favorite club in the world, and been thinking about doing this for a while, and thought I'd take a stab at it. Whether I get 10 subscribers or 100 subscribers, just really wanted to get my views, my thoughts, my opinions out on Arsenal Football Club. Of course, it'll be like management, ownership, players as well. Anytime that there's a game, um, I don't know how many times I will upload. Hopefully it'll be once a week. Um, who knows? Maybe it might be every 3 days. A upload could be 5 minutes. It could be an hour long. It all depends on you if you decide to listen. If you do not decide to listen, uh, just a fair warning: if I offend anybody, well, too bad. Sometimes the truth hurts sometimes when you're discussing your favorite club. Sometimes you can't always be an ass kisser and just say, "Oh, I love the club. I'll support the club no matter what." Sometimes you have to say things to get them off your chest, or to even tell the truth. Sometimes where some people will just sweep things under the rug instead of trying to get their voice out there and try to uh, maybe not help the club because I'm sure ownership, as far as you could see just through ticket pricing alone through Arsenal Football Club, that they don't really give a shit about the fans. They give a shit about the people who can pay for their tickets, not the people who can't. Even though there's plenty of people out there who would love to go see Arsenal Football Club live at the Emirates, on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon and see their favorite players on the pitch playing. But sometimes, through financing, through money, people just don't have it, which is a shame. But right now we're in the silly season, and that's what I'm going to get to on my first upload. And we'll be talking about the transfer window. Um, as everybody knows, last year's transfer window was a complete disaster. Other than the Ozil signing, which I'm sure everybody has their own opinions on of how it went down, and how Ozil pretty much fell into our lap, and how we basically got lucky to get him. But last year was a complete shit show compared to any other years. And that's what Arsenal Football Club has become known as right now in the transfer window. Uh, there's plenty of people. If you go on Twitter, you go on Facebook, you go into any social media, and there'll be plenty of other clubs, fans making fun of Arsenal, the way they handle their transfer business. And ever since David Dean left the club, it's been a complete shit show ever since. Um, I'm not one of those guys that says Wenger out. I'm not one of those guys because I love him as a manager. He's a great manager. He's the best manager in Arsenal history. But as far as Arsene Wenger, the businessman, the sporting director, the manager director, whatever you want to call him, when the transfer window comes, whether it be in the summer or January, he's horrible. He's terrible at it. He doesn't know. All he knows how to do is basically sell. The Ozil deal. I mean, that basically kind of like fell into his lap. He basically got lucky because if you look from last season, we could have got Higuain, and all of a sudden that fell apart because we thought Suarez was available, and of course that fell apart because Liverpool's owner, who was a piece of shit, who should come under some type of investigation from the FA, denied his release clause, which Arsenal did everything right in that saga, that whole Suarez saga from last year. But of course, we got the short end of the stick because the owner didn't want to let him go, and rightfully so. Of course, Suarez is a great player. He's got about two brain cells that work in his head, but that's about it. Other than that, Arsenal did everything right. They did everything by the book. They triggered his release clause, but Liverpool just didn't want to let him go. And of course, they lied about it and said he didn't have a release clause, even though he did. but then Ozil fell into our lap, and you know that deal, or those two deals alone, kind of make me think as an Arsenal fan throughout the transfer window, especially last year. Because if we did get Suarez, were we still going to get Ozil? See, that's one of the questions I like to ask myself sometimes about the transfer window and Arsenal. Because Ivan Gazidis recently said in a panel discussion about 3 days ago that they were working on the Ozil deal for months. Whether that's true or not, who knows? We will probably never know what the real truth about the Ozil deal, the Suarez deal, of what really happened. But to go back on that, if we got Suarez, would we get Ozil as well? Is Ivan Gazidis lying out of his ass saying that, well, we were working on Ozil the whole time as well? And if you remember from last year, Arsenal said they had £70 million to spend. Now, if you look at the Suarez deal, it would have been £40 million. You look at the Ozil deal, it was £42.5 million. That's £82.5 million. That's 12 million and a half million more pounds than they said they had to spend. Were they going to spend it? Who knows? But of course, in this silly season, you know, after the great FA Cup win, we're expecting this is going to be a big summer. This is going to be huge. This is going to be great. And of course, Cesc Fabregas happens. He becomes available from Barcelona. Barcelona wants to let him go. They're interested in getting Koke instead to fill up that Javi role when he finally retires, whether it be this year, next year, who knows. So Barcelona made Cesc Fabregas available. Now I'm a little bit biased here for being a huge Cesc Fabregas fan when I start talking about this, because sometimes I have to calm myself when I start talking about this, because a lot of the things that are coming out just doesn't make sense to me. You know, Cesc Fabregas is beloved by the fans. Even after he left, you can still see on Twitter from ever since he left, you could see there was always something good being said about Cesc from Arsenal fans on Twitter. Well, Cesc had a good game today. He had a goal and assist. He had 2 assists. He had 3 assists. There was always something good said about Cesc Fabregas from Arsenal fans while he was still with Barcelona. And of course myself too, that Cesc Fabregas is one of the main reasons why I became an Arsenal fan. He is my favorite Arsenal player of all time. At least of the Arsenal players that I have seen live, I guess you could say. You know, of course, there's Thierry Henry, there's Dennis Bergkamp, you know, Patrick Vieira, Tony Adams, Ian Wright. You can go on with lists of names that are Arsenal legends. Of course, I didn't have the luxury, at least during that time, to actually see them live. You know, for a fan like me, I had to go on YouTube and, you know, watch old highlights of, you know, Dennis Bergkamp and Thierry Henry and all that kind of stuff. But I was able to watch Cesc Fabregas live, especially when it was at the height of his powers during his time at Arsenal. And there was no other player that I loved more than him. And of course, he becomes available. Arsenal have a buyback clause. And the buyback clause has been, there's been different articles written about it where it's supposed to be £23.6 million for the buyback clause. Now there was another article that said it was £26.9 million for the buyback clause. No one knows what the real number is for his buyback clause. Of course, you would think a world-class player like Cesc Fabregas, if he's available, Arsenal would go out and get him. They would bring him back to the club. And there was a lot of rumors last summer, that Arsenal was going to bring Cesc back to the club. There was plenty of articles written about it because Manchester United were trying to go after Cesc last year. But now he is available. And what did Arsenal do? They said no. At least from all the reports that are being said, Cesc is going to Chelsea, which pisses me off to no end because it just does not make any sense. What is the one thing that Arsenal lacks right now? What is the one thing that they've been telling us for years now? We lack world-class players. We have talent on Arsenal. We have a lot of talent, but we do not have world-class talent other than Mesut Ozil. That's the only world-class player we have right now. We have potential world-class players. We have a potential world-class player in Aaron Ramsey, Wojciech Szczesny. Koscielny is, he's slowly becoming a world-class center half. Theo Walcott can come back next year. Once Cesc left, once Robin Van Persie left, Theo Walcott really stepped up his game. In the 12-13 season, he was our leading scorer. He was leading assist maker as well. He really stepped up his game to where it looked like he was ready to take that next step into being a world-class winner. And of course, there's Jack Wilshere as well, being, at the age of what was he, about like 18 or 19, being called the next England captain, which, you almost have to blame the media on that one for anointing someone captain of a national team when he has yet to really prove himself on that national stage, on that international stage. And one thing that Arsenal Football Club has been telling us year after year, once the Emirates is paid off, we're going to start bringing in world-class talent. We're going to start spending money. Now again, you go back to the Ozil deal. Did that fall into our lap, or is Ivan Gazidis telling the truth? That they were working on it for months. No one heard about the Ozil deal until about maybe a few days before it actually happened, when his name finally surfaced out of nowhere. So you gotta start asking yourself, what's going on with the club? Why aren't they bringing in this world-class talent? Why are they letting Cesc Fabregas, who is a world-class midfielder, who is one of the best midfielders in the world, to take a walk? I don't get it. And there's a lot of Arsenal fans out there who are trying to make excuses of saying we don't need Cesc back. I don't know what planet these people are from. I don't know what kind of football they watch. I don't know what kind of football they watched last year or the year before that. Because the Arsenal Football Club that I watched last year was depleted. They had zero squad depth. At one time, we didn't have a single winger healthy. At one point in time, Aaron Ramsey was out. Jack Wilshere was out. Rosicky had a few knocks here and there. I think the only person that actually stayed healthy throughout the entire season was Giroud and Szczesny. Pure was out for, I think he had the flu for the Manchester United game. I think he was out for one or two more games other than that. Koscielny was out for a few weeks. Let's see, Gibbs was, in and out of the rotation. Sagno had a few knocks here and there, but played most of the season. Arteta was out right at the beginning of the season. Had a knock or two during the season too as well. I think Sandy had a little bit of a knock earlier in the season as well. Of course, Theo Walcott with his ACL injury and his abdominal injury. The Ox was hurt. Lucas was hurt. Sonogo had a back injury. Bentner, who the hell knows what was going on with him? No one really knows what's going on with him, to be honest with you. It's there were so many injuries last year that prevented us from winning the league. It prevented us from possibly going further in the Champions League as well. And you're trying to tell me that we don't need Cesc Fabregas. In this day and age, in this day and age of football, you need two squads to last on four different fronts. Now, I understand that Arsene Wenger, he doesn't really give a shit about the League One Cup or the Carlton Cup, whatever you want to call it. I know he doesn't really give a shit about that one. I know he cares about the Premier League, the FA Cup, and Champions League. Now, the Champions League, you know, it's kind of notorious that he's been chasing that trophy ever since he came to Arsenal. And if you look at the last number of winners of the Champions League, all you got to do is look at Real Madrid, Bayern Munich. How many world-class players do they have on their squad? How many world-class players did Real Madrid have? I mean, you can look at their front line with CR7, Di Maria, Bale, Benzema. All of them are world-class. Their whole front line is world-class. And again, you're trying to tell me that we don't need Cesc Fabregas. We don't need a world-class player on Arsenal. Because let's face it, when's the last time that Jack Wilshere has been healthy for an entire season? What is it? The 2010-2011 season? That's a long time ago. Aaron Ramsey, he came back from that leg break. This year he had a thigh strain or tear, which kept him out for, about 3.5 months. I think he had a little bit of a knock. I think it was either his thigh or his calf again as well. They just had a lower body injury from what I'm looking at from the injury reports. He was out. If you put in total, Aaron Ramsey was out for almost about 4 months of the season. If you look at the injury report from last year, I mean, there was a lot of players who missed almost half the season. And there's some big names up there, like Theo Walcott, like Aaron Ramsey, like Ox, like Lucas, all out. And again, people are trying to say, well, we don't need Cesc Fabregas. And what planet or what world do you live on? Do you think that we don't need a world-class player on Arsenal? Again, like I said, in this day and age, you need two squads to last. I mean, every year Arsene Wenger comes out and says, well, we want to play at least 55 games this year. That means you're going to have a deep run in at least Champions League or the FA Cup, or possibly even both. You need those players. You need those type of players to succeed. And it's at a minimal amount of money. Whichever is correct, whatever it is, if it's 23 million or 26 million. For Arsenal Football Club, that should be nothing. Because how pissed are Arsenal fans going to be at the end of this window if we only end up spending 30, 40 million pounds throughout the whole transfer window? They're telling us that we have 100 million pounds to spend. Now, I know that's not all on transfers. Some of it has to do with contracts and players, getting new contracts. That has a lot to do with that as well. But how pissed are Arsenal fans going to be when we only spend 30 or 40 million? Because that's what a lot of experts are predicting throughout this transfer window, that we might only be spending 30 to 40 million pounds. You take out contracts, maybe you take out about 10, 15, 20 million pounds for new contracts, new paper for some of the current players. because I know Giroud is, you know, trying to re-up. He's trying to get a new contract with Arsenal. You know how, if we only spend 30 to 40 million, that leaves at least probably like 40 million that we didn't spend. 40 million, 26 or 23 million of that 40 million could have went into Fabregas. And what's the one thing that we lacked from last year? What's the one thing we lacked for the last 2 years? Leadership. We didn't have a voice other than Flamini whenever he was on the pitch as a voice, as a leader, as trying to get guys in line, trying to get them motivated, trying to get them pumped up, trying to get them organized. We don't have that right now. Cesc could provide that. He used to be the club captain. He was respected by all the players. The players listened to him. And there's still plenty of the players still left from when he was there. And when you provide another world-class player into a already good squad, it's not a great squad, it's a good squad. A great squad is Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Barcelona. Some of the top teams. We call ourselves a big club, but money-wise, we're a big club. As far as trophies, we don't have the big one yet. We don't have Champions League, and Champions League right now is the most prestigious trophy that you can win at the club level. That's the one trophy that everybody looks at and says, "Oh, you got one of those? Yeah, you're one of the best." Because we're trying to act like that, but we're not there yet. We have, like I said, we have a good squad, but we don't have a great squad yet. Could adding Cesc Fabregas make it better? Absolutely. People are asking, well, what position would he play? Would he play the number 10 role, the Bergkamp hole? Or would he play where Aaron Ramsey and Jack Wilshere currently play at? I say, who cares? Because the one thing you don't say is no to a world-class player. Especially one of Cec's talent. Because again, throughout the last few years, they've been hammering it into our heads, into the fans' heads. Once the Emirates is paid off, we're going to start buying players. We're going to start bringing in world-class talent. But then you have Arsene Wenger saying, well, we don't buy world-class talent, we make world-class talent. Well, which is it? What are we going to do? What is our game plan? What is the business model of Arsenal Football Club? Because right now it seems like the model of Arsenal Football Club is to steal everybody's money. Because a decision like this to say no to a world-class player says a number of things to me. One, it says we don't want to win the Premier League. Two, it says we don't want to win Champions League. Through all my research through Arsenal Football Club, from the early years of Arsene Wenger up until now, you read about stuff about like what David Dean did. Because if he was still with the club, if he was still as the quote-unquote sporting director, managing director, whatever you want to call him, he would never allow this to happen. He would never say no and let Cesc or any player that's currently a world-class player go to a rival. He would go above Arsene Wenger, which he did many times, and say, you know what, I'm going to buy him anyway. I don't care. because the old Arsenal board wanted to win things. They wanted to win Champions League. They wanted to win the Premier League. I go back and I do research about the history of the club and look at some of those teams that Arsene Wenger had from the beginning of his first 9 years. His first 9 years was unbelievable. Of course, his last 9 years, not so great. But if you look at you look at some of those teams, and they were stacked. They were loaded with talent. There's plenty of stories from Thierry Henry, Dennis Bergkamp, talking about how fierce their training sessions were. That Arsene Wenger had to stop training sessions because people were making game day tackles during training sessions because he was afraid that one of his players was going to get hurt. The old board seemed like they wanted to spend the money. They wanted to win trophies. They wanted to win Champions League. This new board with new ownership, it seems like all they want to do is make their pockets fatter. And this is one of those decisions where you can point at and say, this is completely messed up. What is the business model of this football club? Is it to make our pockets fatter? Or is it to actually win trophies? Is it to actually win games? Because right now it looks like Arsenal Football Club is content with finishing fourth, content with just qualifying and hopefully making the knockout stage of the Champions League, not winning it. Because sometimes you got to ask yourself, when you saw the exodus of Cesc Fabregas, Sami Nasri, Alex Song, Gael Clichy, Robin van Persie, in a 2-year stretch, all those guys just left. They bolted. People like to call them traitors, whatever. But now you see a decision like this of saying no to a world-class player. And you got to have to think about it. Were they really traitors, or were they doing the best of what was best for them? Because they were seeing what was going on firsthand. They see what goes on behind the scenes. Now, is it all Arsene Wenger's fault? Probably not. Throughout the years since the Emirates has been built, since it's been there, Arsenal Football Club, it basically pretty much handicapped itself from being any type of player in the transfer market, from buying players, because they wanted to pay off the Emirates first and then spend the money. I don't know of too many sports teams, too many sports franchises in the world that would do that. I know they operate on a different system. That's fine. But not to the point to where you're going to handicap yourself from being competitive, winning trophies, continually bringing in good players, world-class players. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And it doesn't make any sense to me of how people are trying to make excuses of why we don't need a world-class player like Cesc Fabregas on Arsenal. They keep on saying, well, we have Ozil, we have Ramsey. Okay, Ozil's fine. You can mention him as a world-class player because he is. He's one of the best. He's probably, one of the best 2 or 3 number 10s in the world that other Arsenal fans are making to not bring Cesc back. Of course, Aaron Ramsey is one of them. Some fans are even calling him world class already. He's had one good season. The year before that, everybody was ready to put a yard arm around a tree and hang him in North London last year. But this past season, he had a great season. He played like a world-class player, but he's not a world-class player yet. He needs to put at least 2, 3, 4 seasons in a row to be called that. he needs to be one of the top 3 players at his position. Does he have the potential to be that? Yes, he does. But what if he gets injured again? He was out for 4 months last year. What if it happens again? Who are we going to have him back it up? Jack Wilshere? He's already injury prone. Like I said, the last time he's been fully healthy is what? The 2010-2011 season? And speaking of Aaron Ramsey, who's saying that he's going to stay with us? There is an article written from The Guardian on May 3rd where Aaron Ramsey said, possibly one day I would like to go to Real Madrid or Barcelona. I'd fancy that. One of those 2 teams are quite mouth-watering. You know, this is one of our better players saying, yeah, if the opportunity comes, I might take it. And these are one of the players that people are saying, well, we have Aaron Ramsey along with Ozil. This is why we don't need Cesc Fabregas. But he said a little more than a month ago that he would be, that if the opportunity comes, if the time is right, that he would join Real Madrid or Barcelona. Now it kind of amazes me that he says this in a paper like The Guardian, and it just gets swept right under the rug. I remember when it was all over Twitter, and people were just like, he'll never leave us. Of course, I'm sure they said that about Cesc Fabregas, Robin van Persie, probably even said that about Thierry Henry. You know, sometimes we're a little bit arrogant as Arsenal fans because we like to thump our chest and, you know, say we're one of the best clubs in the world. You know, some fans are acting like we won the Champions League this year when it was just the FA Cup. And mind you, we barely beat Hull City. We didn't barely beat Chelsea or Liverpool or Manchester United or Manchester City. It was Hull City, a newly promoted team. And you're trying to tell me from last year, if we didn't have Cesc Fabregas in our squad last year, that he wouldn't have calmed the storm, or he possibly got us a point, maybe even a win. Well, we were 7 points off from the top. And of course, we're trying to convince ourselves we don't need Cesc Fabregas. We don't need a world-class player. If this is what Arsene Wenger is telling us, if this is what Ivan Gazidis is telling us, if this is what Stan Kroenke is telling us, then they better have an outstanding summer. You better see Mario Balotelli come walking through the door. You better see Javi Martinez coming through the door. Antonio Griezmann coming through the door. You better see some world-class talent coming through that door, because if you don't, you're going to look back on this and say, why the fuck did we not sign Cesc Fabregas for next to nothing? I mean, Cesc Fabregas and Mesut Ozil are, you know, I would rate Ozil above Cesc. But for only 23 or 26 million to bring a player like that in, Cesc is only 27 years old. He still has probably a good 4 or 5 years left in him. The quality he can bring, the leadership he can bring, the experience, the desire to win. You need that in a club. What better feel-good story would it have been after winning the FA Cup saying, you know what, we're going to bring the prodigal son back to Arsenal. But we're not doing that. We said no to a world-class player. So you got to think, what the fuck is going on at Arsenal? Do they really want to win? Because right now, I don't know. I can't even answer that question. Because during this silly season, during the transfer window, throughout the last, 4 or 5 years, it's been a shit show. It's been like, okay, who are we selling next? And of course, last summer's transfer window was a complete disaster. And right now, we're on such a high through the FA Cup win. And now we're in the shitter now because we're all thinking, what is Cesc going to look like wearing a Chelsea shirt? Which makes me sick to my stomach. Instead of strengthening our side, we're strengthening other people's sides. Sagna's going to City. Cesc is going to Chelsea. We're strengthening them. We're not strengthening ourselves. Do we have any ambition as a football club? Is there any proof that we want to win Champions League? Is there any proof that we want to win the Premier League? Because saying no to Cesc says no. Of course, this past season they announced that there's a 3% increase in season tickets. Why? Why do that to the fans? Why do that to some of the most loyal fans that you're ever going to see in the world? And then come back and say, you know what? No to Cesc Fabregas. No to the world-class player. It doesn't make any sense. And of course, Ivan Gazidis recently on a panel discussion says, we're in talks with players. Okay, big clubs, their talks are limited. By this stage, they should be talking about contracts. They should be talking about how much the player is going to take to get transferred to Arsenal. I remember this time last year, Chelsea, Man City already had players signed. I even saw it on Twitter today that Ferrandino was on this day signed by Manchester City. I think they had Andre Schürrle wrapped up at Chelsea already. I think Schürrle was wrapped up even before Bayer Leverkusen's season was over. I remember hearing that even before their season was even over, that he was going to go to Chelsea. Why are we so slow? Because by March, maybe April, we should already have our targets. We should already be talking to them. We should already be talking to agents. And feeling out from the agent to the player, are they interested in coming? Or are they not? How much is it going to take? What's the transfer fee going to cost? Now I know this is a weird time of the season because it's a World Cup year. It's always, last World Cup year it was weird because no one really moved until after the World Cup. But if you have the only players that really move before a World Cup is played are if they have buyback clauses or they have buyout clauses, or they're a second and third tier player that no one really wants in the first place. The players who cost less than £10 million. But we had a chance to buy back somebody who is a world-class player who can play the number 10 role if Mesut Ozil gets hurt. Who can play central midfield if Aaron Ramsey gets hurt. And who knows, he might be better than Aaron Ramsey. Because going back from the 12-13 season, everybody hated Aaron Ramsey. The only thing I hated about Aaron Ramsey in the 12-13 season was he gave the ball away too much. Other than that, he hustled, he showed desire, he was a great defender, he played his heart out. But he just gave the ball away too much. But the abuse he got from the 12-13 season, everybody wanted this guy gone. And all of a sudden the 13-14 season happens and everybody loves him. All of a sudden he's anointed as a world-class player when he's not yet. Everybody's, he got voted as player of the year. When last year he was probably the most hated player. Are you really going to go off of one season? Can you really go off of one single season on a player? No one does that. Or are you going to go off many seasons? What? It's been 10 years now since Cesc has been a professional. I think as statistics are with Barcelona for the last 3 years is something like 45 goals and 46 assists. That's consistency right there. And on top of it, he hardly ever gets hurt. I can't remember if he ever got hurt at Arsenal. I can't remember if he ever got hurt at Barcelona. And let's not forget, Thomas Rosicky, he's going to be 34 in October. Santi Cazorla is going to be 30 next year. How many more years do they have left in them? Mikel Arteta. He's going to be, 33, 34 next year as well? I know he's the quote-unquote DM, but how much does he have left? How many more years are we going to be saying, well, we just have to wait one more year, just if they stay healthy, if they stay healthy, if they stay healthy. We've been saying that a ton as Arsenal fans about just about every single player that we've ever had. Because injuries are such an issue. Our medical team is a joke. How we're this big of a club and we don't have our own team doctor is beyond me. We should be investing in that. We have the money. We have the money to do a lot of things, but we just don't want to spend it. Because right now it seems like we have a majority owner who is a tight ass. He likes when the money comes rolling in. He just doesn't like when the money rolls out. And they keep on saying, well, we can't compete with some of the oil guys. Of course you can't. But if you look at the revenue and you look at the money that Arsenal makes year in, year out, we can compete up until a point. We can still buy world-class players. Last year, a lot of the finance guys here on Twitter were saying we could have spent £100 million last summer and it wouldn't even made a dent. They said we can spend $150 million in this transfer window and it wouldn't even make a dent. There's a lot of numbers rolling around saying that we have upwards of $200 million that we could spend if we want to. Of course, with the FFP, financial fair play, coming into play right now, which is a joke in the first place. Arsenal is in good position right now to spend money to go out there and get world-class talent, because that's what we need. We're probably about maybe 3 or 4 players away from really competing for Champions League, to getting into the quarterfinals, to getting into the semifinals, to maybe even getting to the final. But we don't want to spend the money. We're saying no to world-class talent. But right now we're in talks with Lork Remy, Serge Aurier, who will be the replacement supposedly for Bakary Sagna. when he leaves, when he finally signs with City. What are we doing? What are we doing as a football club? Of course, we'll never know the answer because they won't tell us anything. They keep on giving us the same crap they did like last year. Well, we're in talks with players. We were in talks with a lot of players last year as well, but nothing happened. But this is going to be the end of my first upload. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you'll come back again and listen to another one. If there's any news that comes up within the next few days or a couple days or whatever, I'll probably do another upload. Definitely do one every week, especially when the season starts, which can't get here any sooner. I wish the season started next week because the silly season would almost be over and we would have hopefully at least 4 to 5 new players in-house wearing Arsenal shirts, hopefully. But that's what Arsenal fans do. They hope. We have too much hope. Sometimes it seems it seems like we are getting told, ownership seems like they are used car salesmen. And what do used car salesmen do? They sell you a dream. And if that dream doesn't come true, they sell you another one. And they keeps on selling you another one and keep on selling you another one because fools will always hope. Fools will always follow. At some point in time that we as a fan base have to stand up and fight for our football club. But that'll be the end of this first upload. I hope you guys come back again. If you have any questions, comments, please leave them down below. Please subscribe. Again, I'll be doing this for anything that happens related as far as Arsenal news. I'll do another upload probably maybe in a few days. Definitely do one every week, especially when the season starts. I'll probably be doing one after every game to talk about the game, talk about player ratings, who shined, who didn't, what we can work on, stuff like that. So hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully you'll come back. Thanks a lot. Later.